I'm Demethius Jackson, and you're listening to a reading of my book entitled The Realmsic Conquest, The Hero of Legend. Chapter 20. Just as Thane had expected, the inhabitants of the cottage were caught off guard as its steel door nearly flew off the hinges. It only took seconds for Thane to assess the structure's interior. These people were indeed the Realmsic Council. He could tell by their clothing. Along with them were two random kids. But where was his target? Thane's eyes were enraged as he repeatedly scanned from one side of the room to the other. "Where's Maebus?" he shouted, reaching for the closest person to him. His chest heaved violently from the adrenaline flooding his body. The council members fled from his grasp as he stormed across the room after them. "Grab everyone," Thane ordered through clenched teeth and tense neck. A soldier tried to corral the smallest child, but he was too fast. The child slipped from beneath the soldier's arm, knocking him off balance and forcing him to fall on his face. "Nice," the older child cheered, shoving who must have been his brother away from further harm. "Quickly, everyone out, I'll hold them back," ordered a young councilwoman. Thane noticed she was dressed differently from the others, wearing a lavender sundress instead of the olive uniform worn by the other council members. "Londi, look out!" her colleague warned as Thane's second man lunged towards her. As Londi sidestepped, the legionary missed her completely and landed on the ground atop the first soldier, who yet to recover from the child's maneuver. But now she was only a few inches from Thane. He raised his sword high into the air, prepared to strike her down. But with a repetitive circular motion of her arm, Londi heated the air in front of her, producing a solid white bubble within seconds. Flicking her fingers forward, the bubble popped with a bright flash, blinding Thane. "Ah!" he shouted, dropping his sword, stumbling forward. While rubbing his throbbing eyes, he tripped over the other two soldiers and stumbled to the ground. Rolling upon his back, he opened his eyes wide. Spots floated within his vision. He couldn't see the ceiling above him. "Go, now!" he heard Londi shouting to the council members. Thane forced himself onto all fours, but his eyes had yet to recover. From the ground, he could barely make out the silhouettes of the council as they escaped through the cottage's rear door. "Nice work, Londi," Grieve said, as he and the others rushed through the cottage's rear exit. But waiting for them were two other legionaries. Without thinking, Mert ran from behind and launched his entire body into one of the men, tackling him to the ground. Simultaneously, Councilman Grieve grabbed a rock from the ground and smashed it into the helmet of the other. Grieve smiled as Mert slowly rose from atop the soldier he'd knocked out. High-fiving his fellow administrator of military, Grieve shouted, "Good job!" He then drew a deep breath and wiped the sweat from his wrinkled forehead. Despite his age, he'd always been a wilder, rowdier member of the council, and this fight further invigorated him. He felt like a young soldier again. With both legionaries on the ground, the group ran full speed towards the hellish South Plains. "Come on," Hegan yelled, skipping as fast as his small legs would carry him. He waved the others forward. "Follow me. There's a backup place in the plains." "Wait," Grieve bellowed, stopping the entire group. "What about the box? We left it behind." "Leave it," John yelled. "No," Grieve protested. "We were told to protect it, that it was essential to the plan. We can't just leave it there for them to find." His speech was slow but clear. "But Councilman, we're not warriors," First interjected. "Yes, you were an experienced soldier in your day, but we can't defend against fully trained combat legionaries now." "We just did," Grieve retorted. "They'd kill us and take the box," First quickly rebutted. "We can take them." "No," Elva flatly stated, grabbing his tightly flexed arm. "No, we can't." "Yes, we can," Grieve insisted. "Fine, then you go. I'll not stop you. But I'll also not jeopardize the lives of the others and these two children." Grieve glanced at Hegan and Hom, noting their frailness, perhaps for the first time. Elva's gaze portrayed more than her words ever could. He said nothing as she turned away from him, directing Hegan to lead them onward. As the others left also, Mert proceeded to follow them. Grieve tugged at his elbow. "You too?" "What choice do we have?" Mert sighed. "But what if they take the box?" "Grieve, how are they even going to know what that box is? We don't even know what that box is." Wyndham agreed, approaching them. "Please, Councilman, come with us. We can always come back when things are clear." Grieve considered it for a moment, wiping the sweat from his forehead once again. His breathing slowed as calm returned to his body. He then conceded with a nod. Together, he, Mert, and Wyndham hurried to catch up with the other council members. General Thane staggered out of the cottage's rear exit, still rubbing his eyes. They ached from the flash they'd received only moments ago. Seeing his 2 soldiers on the ground, he quickly assailed them, kicking them repeatedly. "Get up!" he barked. He stepped over them to peer deep into the forest, but could see no signs of the council members. "Sir, permission to pursue?" a legionary stepping out of the cottage asked. "No, Maebus wasn't with them," he replied, "so don't waste your time. We'd be better off searching the cottage for clues." Thane strode back in and surveyed his surroundings. His men filed in after him. "I want this place turned upside down. Bring me anything that looks important." Without hesitation, the legionaries began knocking over furniture and pulling items out of their place. Thane stood in the middle of their scavenge, unsure of what his next move would be. He was positive Maebus would be here. He told the warlord that he would soon have the king, but now he had no clue where he was. Perspiration soaked the inside of his armor. What would he tell Damien? Failure was not an option. The warlord had told him those exact words often enough. A scroll on the table caught his attention. He moved to the table where it lay. Immediately, Thane noticed the cracked Realmsic seal. Spreading the parchment open, he found nothing written on the paper. What? It didn't make sense. Why would anyone officially seal a blank letter? Unless the message was hidden, like those symbols in the woods. He removed the reflector from his pocket and shone its light upon the page. Inked words magically appeared. It was a letter from Maebus himself. Thane couldn't believe his eyes. Excitement filled him as he scanned the lines of the message. "The king went north," he eventually exclaimed. "The king went north!" It was just as he'd first expected. But how? He then remembered originally tracking Maebus's footprints and how they abruptly ended in that empty field. But there was no place he could have gone. Unless... Thane almost smacked his own forehead. "They went underground," he sighed. "There must have been a hidden passageway or something." He really could have kicked himself for not trusting his instincts. He crumbled the letter in his hands and tossed it into the fire pit, which still burned. He rationalized that if he and his men rode double time, perhaps they could still pick up Maebus's trail and catch him. But wait! Thane's head snapped upwards. If he remembered correctly, from Centerpoint, there were no roads that led to the north. He'd either have to travel back through the western nations to cross into the northern lands, or he'd have to traverse the uncharted woods. Thane's shoulders rounded as he groaned long and tiresome. Traverse the uncharted woods. Nothing was ever easy. So be it. "Let's get out of here," he commanded. "I found what I was looking for." "Sir," a legionary said, "what about this?" He presented Thane with a box filled with rocks. Thane looked at the man in bewilderment. "What about it?" He took them from the soldier. "Sir, these rocks were sealed inside, so I thought they might be important." The general carefully examined the container and its contents. From what he could tell, there was nothing special about the rocks or the box they came in. "Forget them," he said, dropping them all to the ground. "Let's go," he huffed to the rest of his men. "Maebus went north."